The discovery. The edge of known Space Commander Zara Thek pressed her scaled palm against the cool metal of the observation deck's viewport, watching the stars drift past like scattered diamonds on black silk. The exploration vessel Stellar Dawn had been traveling through the Outer Rim territories for 3 months, charting systems that existed only as faint dots on their most detailed star maps. As lead xenobiologist for the Caridian Republic's Deep Space Survey, she had seen many wonders, but lately, the endless void had begun to feel empty. "Commander," called Navigation Officer Jorik from his station, his voice carrying an unusual note of excitement. "We're detecting something unusual about 2 million kilometers off our starboard bow." Zara moved to the central command platform, where Captain Morvek stood reviewing sensor data. The elderly Caridian's purple skin had deepened to its thinking shade, which meant whatever they had found was significant enough to puzzle even his experienced mind. "What are we looking at?" Zara asked, studying the display screens that showed nothing but the familiar scattered light of distant suns. "That's just it," replied Science Officer Nelith, her young voice trembling with barely contained enthusiasm. "Our sensors are picking up an energy signature, but visual scans show empty space. Whatever's out there is either cloaked or our instruments are malfunctioning." Captain Morvek's weathered face creased into a frown. "Run a full diagnostic on all sensor arrays. I won't have us chasing ghost readings." 20 minutes later, Nelith looked up from her console with wide eyes. "All systems are functioning perfectly, Captain. The energy signature is definitely there and it's strong. Whatever's generating it has been active for a very long time." Zara felt her scientific curiosity awakening like a sleeping creature stirring to life. "Define very long time, Nelith." The young scientist hesitated, checking her readings twice before answering. "Based on the energy decay patterns and quantum resonance signatures, I'd estimate this source has been active for approximately 700,000 years. The bridge fell silent, except for the soft hum of life support systems. Even the junior officers stopped their routine tasks to stare at the science station. In all their centuries of space exploration, the oldest artifacts the Caridian Republic had discovered were barely 50,000 years old. "That's impossible," declared Engineer Korvix from his position near the engine monitors. "Nothing technological can remain functional for that long. Cosmic radiation alone would have degraded any power source millennia ago." Captain Morvek moved to the communication console. "Open a channel to command. They need to know about this before we proceed." "With respect, Captain," Zara interrupted. "By the time we get authorization from command and they send a proper research team, we could have preliminary data that might help them understand what we're dealing with." The captain's large eyes focused on her with the intensity that had made him legendary among exploration crews. "You're suggesting we investigate without backup?" "I'm suggesting we do what exploration teams are supposed to do, explore. We have full scientific equipment and enough firepower to handle most threats. If there's even a chance this is a genuine archaeological find, we owe it to the Republic to gather basic information." Morvek considered this for a long moment, his skin cycling through several thoughtful shades. Finally, he nodded. "Very well, but we proceed with maximum caution. Jorik, take us closer, but keep our shields at full power and weapons ready." As the Stellar Dawn approached the coordinates, their screens began to show something that defied explanation. Where empty space should have been, a massive shape began to materialize, as if it were fading into visibility like morning mist clearing from a mountainside. "By the ancient waters," whispered Communications Officer Velik. "Look at the size of that thing." The vessel that appeared before them was unlike anything in their extensive databases. It stretched nearly 20 kilometers from bow to stern, its hull a deep black that seemed to absorb the light from nearby stars. The design was elegant in its simplicity, smooth curves that suggested both power and grace, with no visible weapons or communication arrays. "Scanner analysis shows the hull is composed of materials we can't identify," Nelith reported, her voice filled with awe. "The metal appears to be self-repairing and has shown no degradation despite its age. There are also energy conduits running throughout the ship that are still active." Zara studied the alien vessel with growing excitement. This was the discovery of a lifetime, perhaps the discovery of their civilization's lifetime. Any signs of life aboard? Negative for biological signatures, but there's definitely artificial intelligence activity. The ship's computer systems are not just functional. They appear to be actively monitoring us. Captain Morvek made his decision. Prepare a boarding. Shuttle. Commander Thek, you'll lead the research team. Take Nelith for scientific analysis, Korvix for technical assessment, and Security Chief Brack for protection. I want constant communication, and if anything seems threatening, you retreat. Immediately. An hour later, Zara found herself suited up and approaching the mysterious vessel in a small exploration craft. Through the shuttle's viewport, the ancient ship loomed above them like a metallic mountain floating in space. As they drew closer, lights began appearing along its hull, not harsh spotlights but gentle illuminations that seemed almost welcoming. The ship is responding to our presence, Korvix observed, monitoring their instruments. It's generating a docking bay for us. Indeed, a section of the hull was transforming, creating an opening perfectly sized for their shuttle. The process was so smooth and silent that it seemed more like organic growth than mechanical construction. This level of adaptive technology is beyond anything we've achieved, Nelith whispered. Whoever built this understood engineering principles we're still discovering. They docked with barely a whisper of contact. Atmospheric scanners showed that the ship was generating breathable air for them, somehow analyzing their biological needs and providing the perfect environment. Security Chief Brack, his warrior instincts sharp despite his scientific curiosity, kept his weapon ready as they prepared to enter the vessel. The airlock opened to reveal a corridor that stretched into soft darkness. As they stepped inside, lights automatically illuminated their path, creating a gentle glow that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. The interior was as elegant as the exterior, smooth surfaces carved with intricate patterns that looked almost like flowing water, frozen in metal. The gravity is perfectly adjusted for us, Korvix noted, checking his readings. This ship is actively accommodating our presence. They walked through corridors wide enough for 10 beings to move side by side, past chambers whose purposes they could only guess at. Everything was pristine, as if the ship had been built yesterday rather than hundreds of millennia ago. Finally, they reached what appeared to be a central command center. The circular chamber was dominated by a raised platform surrounded by consoles that pulsed with soft light. As they entered, screens emerged from the walls displaying symbols and images that were hauntingly familiar, yet completely foreign. These patterns, Nelith said, studying the displays, they're mathematical sequences, but they're written in a way that suggests whoever created them thought about numbers differently than we do. Suddenly, all the screens changed. A new image appeared, a blue and green planet with white clouds, orbited by a single large moon. The world was beautiful, but something about it filled Zara with an inexplicable sadness. I've seen this world before, she said quietly. In historical archives. This is Earth, the legendary homeworld of the humans. The team exchanged glances. Humans were more myth than reality to most galactic civilizations. Ancient stories spoke of a species that had traveled among the stars long before current civilizations achieved spaceflight, but they had vanished, so completely that many scholars doubted they had ever existed. Before anyone could comment further, the screens changed again. This time, text appeared in symbols that somehow, impossibly, they could all understand. Welcome, children of the stars. We have been waiting for you. The words hung in the air like a challenge and a promise. Security Chief Brack raised his weapon, but Zara held up a restraining hand. Whatever intelligence controlled this ship had had 700,000 years to harm visitors. If that had been its intention, do not fear, the message continued. I am the guardian of this vessel, created by the humans before their final journey. I have watched over this region of space, protecting younger civilizations as they learned to walk among the stars. Protecting from what? Zara asked aloud, though she wasn't sure if the intelligence could hear them. The screen shifted to show images of different worlds, some thriving with cities and life, others scorched and empty. From themselves came the answer. From the mistakes that young species make when they first discover the power to destroy worlds, from the fear that turns exploration into conquest. New text appeared. Your people, the Caridians, faced such a choice 300 years ago when you first encountered the Zephyrian Empire. You chose negotiation over war, cooperation over domination. That choice saved millions of lives. Zara felt her heart skip a beat. The first contact with the Zephyrians was legendary in Caridian history, a tense diplomatic crisis that had nearly resulted in galactic war until a mysterious technical malfunction had disabled the Zephyrian warfleet, forcing both sides to the negotiating table. That was no malfunction, the Guardian continued as if reading her thoughts. That was human intervention, though your histories do not record it. We have been watching, guiding, protecting, waiting for the day when younger species would be ready to inherit the galaxy. Inherit it from whom? Korvix asked, his engineer's mind grappling with the implications. The screen showed the image of Earth again, but now they could see it was dying, its sun expanding, its surface burning. From us. The humans knew their time was ending. Rather than fight the inevitable, they chose to prepare the galaxy for those who would come after. What happened to them? Nelith whispered. They became something greater than any single species. They became the guardians of possibility, the protectors of potential. The screens now showed dozens of points of light scattered across a galactic map. This ship is one of many. We are positioned at key points throughout known space, watching over civilizations as they mature. Zara realized the magnitude of what they had discovered. This wasn't just an ancient artifact. It was part of a vast network of guardians that had been protecting galactic civilization for nearly 1,000,000 years. But now, the Guardian continued, and its tone seemed to carry a weight of cosmic sadness. The time of watching is ending. Ancient enemies stir in the dark between galaxies. Threats approach that require more than observation to defeat. The lights in the chamber began to pulse with increasing rhythm, and they could feel vibrations through the deck plating as massive systems throughout the ship awakened from their long slumber. The other Guardians are awakening. Across the galaxy, ships like this one are preparing for what may be our final duty. The text paused, then continued with what seemed like hope. But perhaps not our final gift. The humans left more than just weapons and watchers. They left teachers for those wise enough to learn. Before anyone could ask what that meant, alarms began sounding through the ship, not warning klaxons, but something that sounded almost like a celebration or a call to arms that had been silent for 700,000 years. The Guardian's final message appeared on every screen simultaneously. The time of testing approaches. Return to your people. Help them choose wisely. The greatest battle in galactic history is about to begin, and the outcome will determine whether the universe remembers humanity as protectors or mourns the galaxy as another civilization that destroyed itself through fear. The screens went dark, but the ship continued to hum with awakening power. As the Caridian team made their way back to their shuttle, they could see through the viewports that space around them was changing. Other lights were appearing in the distance, more Guardian ships awakening after their millennia-long vigil. The age of watching was ending. The age of choice had begun. The awakening, the weight of truth. Commander Zara Thek stood in the briefing room aboard the Stellar Dawn, watching the faces of her crew as they processed what she had just told them. The silence stretched like a taut cable, ready to snap under the weight of revelation. Outside the viewports, the human Guardian ship continued its patient orbit, its dark hull now pulsing with lights that hadn't shone for hundreds of millennia. So you're telling us, Captain Morveck said slowly, his skin cycling through shades of disbelief, that for the past 700,000 years, extinct humans have been secretly protecting galactic civilization? Not extinct, Zara corrected. Transformed. According to the Guardian, they chose to become something beyond individual survival. They became the protectors of every species that would come after them. Science Officer Nelith pulled up a holographic display showing their sensor readings from the past few hours. Captain, we're detecting similar energy signatures appearing throughout this entire sector. At least 12 more ships have manifested. Within the last 6 hours. Navigation Officer Jorik looked up from his calculations with obvious concern. Sir, I'm receiving priority communications from Republic Command. They're reporting that ancient vessels are appearing near every major inhabited system in known space. The Senate is calling an emergency session. Before Captain Morvek could respond, the ship's communication system activated on its own. The familiar voice of the Guardian filled the briefing room, though no one had opened a channel. Forgive the intrusion, but time grows short. I must show you something that your leaders need to understand. The room's displays changed to show a three-dimensional map of the galaxy. Hundreds of points of light appeared throughout the spiral arms, each one representing a Guardian ship. But beyond the galactic rim, something else was visible, a darkness that seemed to move with purpose, consuming the light of stars as it approached. The Devourers, the Guardian's voice carried a weight of ancient fear. They have fed on 17 galaxies, leaving nothing but empty space in their wake. We had hoped they would not find this galaxy for another 1,000,000 years, but the quantum signatures from your species' faster-than-light experiments have created beacons that led them here. Engineer Korvix studied the display with growing horror. How long until they arrive? 18 standard months. They move slowly because they are thorough. When they arrive, they will systematically harvest every planet, every star, every trace of life and energy until nothing remains but cold emptiness. Zara felt the blood drain from her face. The humans knew this was coming? My creators discovered the Devourers during their final expansion beyond this galaxy. Rather than flee to another galaxy and leave yours defenseless, they chose to stay. They transformed themselves into us. Their consciousness merged with technology that could endure until the time of greatest need. The display zoomed in to show individual star systems where Guardian ships hung in space near populated worlds. On some, the local species were attempting communication. On others, military fleets surrounded the ancient vessels with weapons powered and ready to fire. The test begins now, the Guardian continued. Each species must choose. Will they see us as threats to be destroyed, or allies offering assistance in the fight for survival? Those who choose fear will face the Devourers alone. Those who choose trust will receive humanity's final gift. Captain Morvek stood, his military training warring with the unprecedented situation. What kind of gift? Knowledge, technology, but most importantly, unity. The Devourers cannot be defeated by any single species, no matter how advanced. They can only be stopped by an alliance of every spacefaring civilization working together with perfect coordination. Security Chief Brack, who had remained silent throughout the briefing, finally spoke. And if some species refuse to cooperate? The Guardian's pause seemed heavy with sorrow. Then they will be mourned along with their worlds. We cannot force cooperation. That was the first lesson my creators learned in their own wars. Unity must be chosen freely, or it becomes the very tyranny they sought to prevent. Suddenly, the ship's emergency communication system activated. The voice of Admiral Kresh, Supreme Commander of the Caridian Defense Force, filled the room with barely controlled panic. All vessels, this is Priority Alpha Command override. Unknown alien craft have appeared in 37 systems throughout Republic space. Military analysis suggests coordinated invasion. All ships are ordered to return to defensive positions immediately. Captain Morvek moved toward the communication console, but the Guardian's voice stopped him. Before you respond, Captain, let me show you what your military leaders cannot see. The displays changed again, showing the Caridian home system. Near the blue-green world of Caridia Prime floated another Guardian ship, identical to the one they had discovered. But surrounding it were dozens of Republic warships, their weapons trained on the ancient vessel. Admiral Kresh has given the order to fire, the Guardian reported with infinite sadness. In approximately 4 minutes, your people will attack the ship that has protected them for 3 centuries. The briefing room erupted in shocked voices, but Zara's mind was racing ahead to the implications. Guardian, you said these ships have defensive capabilities. What happens when they fire? The ship will defend itself. It will not harm your people directly, but it will disable their vessels to prevent them from making a mistake that cannot be undone. However, Admiral Kresh will interpret this as confirmation of hostile intent. Zara turned to Captain Morvek. Sir, we have to warn them. If the Admiral thinks the Guardians are invaders, he'll order a full-scale attack on every Guardian ship in Republic space, Morvek finished grimly, which will force them to defend themselves, which will look like aggression to every other species in the galaxy. The Guardian's voice carried a note of desperate hope. There is another path. Your species has already proven capable of wisdom once before. 300 years ago, when faced with the choice between war and peace with the Zephyrians, you chose to trust rather than destroy. New images appeared on the displays, historical records that showed the famous first contact with the Zephyrian Empire. But now they could see what the official histories had never recorded. A massive Guardian ship hiding in the shadow of Caridia's moon, its weapons trained not on the Caridian fleet, but on the Zephyrian dreadnoughts. The Zephyrians had come to conquer, the Guardian explained. Their fleet carried weapons designed to sterilize entire worlds. When your diplomats chose to negotiate rather than attack, we disabled their weapon systems, making war impossible and peace inevitable. Science Officer Nelith stared at the display in wonder. You've been protecting us all along, not just you. Every species that chose wisdom over fear, cooperation over conquest. But now the time for protection is ending. The Devourers come, and against them, even we cannot stand alone. Captain Morvek made his decision. Open a direct channel to Admiral Kresh. Maximum encryption. Sir, Communications Officer Valek said hesitantly. Command has ordered communication silence until all ships return to defensive positions. This is bigger than military protocol, Morvek replied firmly. If we don't stop what's about to happen, there might not be a republic left to return to. The channel opened, and Admiral Kresh's weathered face appeared on the main screen. His expression was grim, his eyes holding the weight of command during a crisis. Captain Morvek, why haven't you begun your return journey? Every minute we delay gives the invaders more time to coordinate their attack. Admiral, they're not invaders. We've been in contact with one of their ships. They're trying to help us. Kresh's expression hardened. Captain, I'm going to assume that proximity to alien technology has affected your judgment. Return to base immediately for debriefing and medical evaluation. Sir, in 4 minutes you're going to order an attack on the ship near Caridia Prime. That attack will be seen as an act of aggression by the most powerful defensive network in galactic history. Please just listen to what we've learned. For a moment Kresh hesitated. He had known Morvek for 20 years, had seen him face impossible situations with clear thinking and steady nerves. But the situation was unlike anything in military protocols. 2 minutes, Captain. Make it count. Zara stepped forward. Admiral, these ships belong to humanity, the species that built the first galactic civilization. They've been protecting younger species for 700,000 years, including us. The Zephyrian crisis, the technical failures that prevented war, that was their intervention, protecting us from making a catastrophic mistake. Even if that's true, Kresh replied, how do we know their intentions haven't changed? How do we know this isn't an invasion disguised as protection? The Guardian's voice filled the communication channel without invitation. Because, Admiral, Kresh, an invasion would have succeeded 700,000 years ago when your species was still discovering fire. Kresh's face went pale as he realized he was speaking directly to an alien intelligence. Who are you? I am the Guardian of this sector, created by human consciousness merged with technology that has endured since before your civilization existed. I have watched your species grow from a primitive tribe to a galactic power. I have protected you from threats you never knew existed, and now I offer you the choice that will determine whether your species survives the next 18 months. What choice? The displays throughout both ships showed the approaching darkness beyond the galactic rim. An enemy comes that has devoured 17 galaxies. They cannot be defeated by any single species. They can only be stopped by every spacefaring civilization working in perfect unity. Will you help build that unity, or will you let fear destroy the galaxy's only hope? Admiral Kresh stared at the images for a long moment, his military mind grappling with the unprecedented situation. Finally, he spoke. If you're truly protectors, prove it. Show us this enemy. Show us why we should trust you. The Guardians' response came not in words but in a direct transfer of data that filled every screen and every mind with the terrifying truth of the Devourers. They saw galaxies stripped of all life and energy, entire civilizations consumed as fuel for the journey to the next galaxy. They felt the weight of 700,000 years of vigil, of watching and waiting for this moment when all the Guardian ships would either unite the galaxy or watch it die. When the vision ended, Admiral Kresh was quiet for a long time. Around him, his command staff looked shaken but determined. Finally, he spoke. "What do you need us to do?" "Cancel the attack. Open communication with the Guardian ship at Caridia Prime. Begin reaching out to other species governments to explain what's coming. Most importantly, prepare your people for the greatest alliance in galactic history." Kresh nodded slowly. "And if other species refuse to cooperate?" The Guardian's voice carried infinite sadness. "Then we will protect those who choose unity and mourn those who choose isolation. But understand, Admiral, without complete cooperation, the galaxy cannot be saved. The Devourers have consumed 17 galaxies because civilizations always believe they can survive alone." As the communication ended, Zara looked around the briefing room at her colleagues. They had set out to explore the unknown regions of space, and had instead discovered that they were part of a story that began long before their species reached the stars. Outside the viewports, more lights were appearing in the darkness as Guardian ships throughout the galaxy awakened from their ancient sleep. The age of protection was ending. The age of cooperation had begun. The next 18 months would determine whether the galaxy would stand united against the ultimate threat or join the 17 galaxies that had already been consumed by their own fear and division. The humans had given them the tools for survival. Now it was up to the living species to prove worthy of that sacrifice. In the distance, the darkness continued its slow approach, patient and inexorable. But for the first time in 700,000 years, the galaxy would not face extinction alone.